Thank you. Wow, was not expecting such a great introduction. A lot of pressure on my shoulder now. Okay, so what we're going to try to do today is, and I'm going to try to do today is really bring some examples of what you just heard, because you know, sometimes sentences and main ideas are very nice, but then you face reality, and reality sometimes can also slap you on the face. It's not as easy as it looks. So I would like to do maybe a little introduction about who we are and a little bit of our history and my personal history. And then it would be nice maybe to have a bit of more of a conversation with Dirk as well about his points, because we felt they're very close to us. As a matter of fact, from me to we especially represent the historical moments that we are living. OTB, it's a group of a family, the Rosso family, that was founded by my father. And everything started from him, and he was the center of our organizations for many years. But now the challenge is really, how do we take his vision, his entrepreneurial spirit, and take it to the future, where maybe the company will be without him. So this particular phase is very crucial, because we have to translate one person into a spirit, and something that can last longer than this person. So a little bit of setting the stage. I guess all of you might know Diesel, but not necessarily know the person behind Diesel, who is my father, Stefano Rosso, who was born in a farm, 62 years old, 61 years old. And he started from nothing. He was just somebody with a great strength, a great vision, a lot of passion, and he built an empire where Diesel is probably the best known brand, but as a matter of fact, he became a conglomerate of several brands. One of them you should know very well is Viktor and Rolf. It's based in Amsterdam. Then we have Margiela, Marni, and we have a series of distribution and licensing facilities, Staff International, focusing on the premium and pret-à-porter segment of fashion, and Brave Kid, which is focusing on the development of lines for kids. So it's quite a big and mastodontical thing that he was able to put together. He was truly a visionary and a revolutionary. For what concerns me, I'm just a more regular guy that was lucky enough to grow up in a very international environment. Our home in a small town of Italy was always full of international people coming from all over the world, blue hair, tattoos. So me and my brother, we were really able to be inspired and have a global perspective and open-minded, even from a small town. Then we were lucky enough to be able to travel around the world and see things. And you know, maybe today it sounds stupid, but back in the 90s, there was no really internet, first cell phones at the end of the 90s. So to know about the world, you had to go and live it, or you could just read it in magazine. So to be able to see what was happening around there really influenced our lives and our point of view, seeing all these cultural differences. So one day, I was studying in New York, and I had this meeting with my father, and he was saying, "So, Stefano, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "You know what, I have the chance to live outside of Italy as well, study outside, work for other companies. I realize our group is amazing. Why should I ever want to go and work for somebody else or do something else if I have the opportunity to work in an environment with such strong brands that almost 99% of the people I know would love to work for. So I decided to come back and be part of the development of OTB. And you know, when you come back, the first thing you do, you tend to imitate and have a role model, right? Leadership is very important. So my success model was my father, amazing person that did everything he did. And so at the beginning, what I tried to do was trying to imitate him, be like him. And you know what? I failed miserably. It was a big hit because at the end I realized, and they made me realize, I'm somebody else. So it's very important, I'm trying to come to a conclusion, it's very important to understand that there are certain types of people that can make an impact, but it doesn't mean that we can be that person. So my father was a revolutionary. The next phase of OTB and what I'm going to try to do, and we are trying to do, is really to make that revolution become a constant evolution and keep on perpetuating his entrepreneurial spirit, but translated in actions that people can do normally every single day. So that's why, from my point of view, from me, one strong entrepreneurs, to we, which means me and all the people working in the company, is really a very delicate phase of our history. We need to make sure that we're able to take the spirit but translate it into actions, and maybe also sometimes into boring things, things that people give for granted, like a vision, a mission statement, writing down values. Because, you know, what is intangible tends to fade away. But once you're able to take that intangible spirit and make it become something concrete that everybody can get inspired to, then you're making a difference for the future. So, what else? I'm very intrigued, actually, by the points, the key principles that Dirk was talking about, because I realize how all of them I feel very related to, really. But as a matter of fact, they're the most difficult things to do, very, very complicated. I don't know, maybe Dirk, if you want to help me on this. But this was my little intro.
Thank you very much, Stefano.
Thank you.
I would like to invite you to sit down now, as well as Dirk. And we're going to talk about those 5 principles, because we've actually spoken already with each other in quite some evidence and story-based detail about the initiatives that you have been implementing at Only the Brave. And one of the things that we spoke about, and that Dirk spoke about, I thought it'd be an interesting place to start, is in order to empower people, you need to make a link between job satisfaction and job performance. And one of your ideas, one of your studies, is suggesting that autonomy is really crucial in that equation. So in order to make a good and strong link between job satisfaction and job performance, you need to allow for enough autonomy among the people who are working. One of the discussions we had was, what do you do? Does this necessitate hiring only people who have a drive towards autonomous work? And how does it play out around autonomy, and particularly at the mid or lower levels of the organization at Only the Brave?
But, you know, it's very difficult because you don't have an equation that works for everybody. For sure, it's important to understand what type of profile you need for each individual jobs. And in some areas, you definitely need somebody that is more efficient, that can do a job very well. Let's say more practical. Somewhere else, you need people to bring their point of view, their mindset to the table, and you want them to actually bring something and change things, because otherwise you're very stable. Just to give you a couple of examples, maybe in accountancy, you need somebody that is good to do that type of job, but you're not expecting them to change the way they're approaching their work. When you are in the design office and the style office, you need people to challenge every single day and see things from another planet, not even from outside. Because it's where you drive your future, it's where you bring the innovation to the table.
Have you been able to encourage a sense of contribution from a point of autonomy in the company with your initiatives?
Yeah, we've done well. I mean, also in the past, my father was always able to find people and create the right team. And he was very much giving autonomy to people. What's changing is that differently than once, you don't have somebody physically there as a point of reference to who you could ask in case of inquiry, a direct answer. So what now we're trying to push more is that people take more initiatives on their own and they're not expecting to have a direction necessarily or the answers to their problems. And to do that, even though it sounds basic, we wrote down 4 values. And I always say, you know, if you have any doubt, 99% of the time, these values are going to be able to make you take a decision, and it will probably be the right choice. And it's been really helping people to have, you know, the North Star in the case that they were not able to get a direct answer from somebody.
What kind of practices are you seeing around this issue?
Around decision making, or?
Around encouraging autonomy and perhaps even challenging the status quo in order to create a cultural change of more contribution evenly throughout the organization?
Well, one thing, and that sort of like comes back to my last point, is to ask people what they think. And to not tell them what needs to be done, but be much more like mission driven. So more about, okay, this is the goal that we want to do, this is what we want to reach to, but I don't know exactly how we are going to get there. And even the goal that we have may change while we are working towards it. So one thing would be is not to fill it in, because you are the one in the leadership position, but you basically give it back to the people in the organization. It's just like, okay, if we agree that this is where you're going to, how would you do that? How can you use things? And then what you will see a lot of times is that people come up with solutions you never thought about. They come up with possibilities that you don't know everybody, you don't know everything. I think that is very important. It's the same as when you look at successful teams. You need to have people not only who know their stuff, but are also related to people outside of the organization so they can bring in new information. And that is very important to be successful.
So in a way, we're dealing with a couple of different themes here: hiring the right talent in,
Yes.
and making sure they're not only capable from a functional standpoint, which, by the way, one of my major themes at school is watch out for job descriptions, because they talk a lot about what you're going to do, but not necessarily about
Yes.
how much you contribute to how you're going to do it.
Yes.
And then there's also not just hiring the right talent, but there's also cultivating the talent you have. And I know that you have mentioned that the mid-management level is really crucial for you.
Hey, you know, more than top managers, which are at the end of their journey, sorry to say that, I should not say it being a CEO, but
No one here.
truth, it's very important second, third layer management, because, and if I have to give an age range, let's say from 30 to 40 years old, that's when you're really able to make the difference. You're still young enough to have a different point of view and bring newness to the organization, but also you are the one that are shaping the future of the organization, and you should be the one leading it to the future. So it's fundamental that you empower these people. And honestly, it's not easy. It's not easy. In the past, we were really able and key and good in doing this for one simple reason: we were all young. Because the average age still today in our company is 32 years old. But, you know, growing up is going to be a major task, because when you have an organization that is very young, it comes naturally. But when it starts to age up and you have the higher level of the company getting older, it's more difficult, because then you need to get the people at a lower position able to express themselves and bring something to the table. And it's not so simple.
I think what's interesting, particularly in your case, and I was speaking with Tiziana Rosato, your chief of HR, before your company started to grow quite a bit, you had situations where distribution chains were farmed out, but then it became more important to have more control over distribution in the different countries where you're working, which means taking on board more people of a temperament which is not necessarily young, cool, oriented towards fashion, but a different temperament altogether that's necessary. When you've grown, how have you been able, through the growth, to adapt the culture according to any of these principles around motivation, around empowerment, around making sure people feel autonomous enough?
Yeah, it's not simple. Plus, we are not only growing in terms of size, we are growing in terms of complexity. More companies, more brands. You know, cultural differences are really complicated when you don't only grow in size, but you also take different objects and put them together. The best thing is really to try to have a common objective, common strategy, having a series of services that are across for everybody, so having the best practices put in place in functions that are the same everywhere, like HR, finance, logistics, or let's say the service function, but then give total freedom to brands. So we always kept Victor and Rolf in Amsterdam, D-Squared is in Milano, Diesel is in the middle of nowhere in Braganza. It's beautiful, but it's in the middle of nowhere. I'm just joking. Margiela is in Paris, but we want to make and create separate environment in which they can grow on their own and develop their individuality. And it's the same thing they have to do in the company. Bring on the best practices, but make sure that people individuality comes out. So shape the frame, but inside the frame, people have to move freely.
And they're free to interpret autonomy and humility, particularly in leadership, which, as you noted, is an interesting concept. What kind of best practices or stories can you relate to us that dive in a little bit more to this idea of humility in leadership and the value of creating a culture through humility?
Well, the challenge, of course, is that's very difficult to say, I'm humble, right? This is very difficult. If you do research, you can have a good insight if you're transformational, if you have a vision, that's fine. But saying like, I'm a very humble person is a challenge. So this is always like, okay, how do I do this? If you are like, by doing it and by saying it, you're probably not.
Yeah. Sort of like, I'm an experienced professional, good team player, great communicator, very humble leader.
This
in your LinkedIn summary, don't do that.
Yeah, but yes, exactly. Yes, I know. That's exactly what it is. But I think one thing that you see, if you see CEOs which are from other companies, examples that are more like exemplify that, is they are very approachable. I think that's one key element. They are not afraid to go on the shop floor, or it's like the former CEO of Southwest Airlines, which is a lot of times used as an example. He would even go and help, with the luggage and be there for people, just to do what needed to be done.
So I'm hearing sort of a Hofstede, for those who remember Hofstede from your studies, kind of power distance theme here, which is humility is also being present and closer to all levels of the organization,
Yes.
yeah?
Yes.
It's not simple. I have,
What's the
honestly-
challenge? Can you I'm interested.
No, I take that point actually as one of my strong points. I always think, this is me. I lead with humility, letting people come, bring their ideas, stay one step back, being behind them, support them, but let them go ahead. But it's very difficult, and that's something you said also, being approachable. It's funny enough because the other day I was talking to somebody which I don't work with, and this girl is leaving the company, so no filters. And she talked to me and said, Stefano, yeah, it's nice to know you because from far away we are scared of you. And I was very surprised because whatever I do when I work with somebody is really bring, I always say, you have to say we when you're doing something, and I when it's time to get the hit and take the shit.
Yes.
And I push that. Is my style of managing with my team, but then I realized that I'm not that approachable from others, evidently, because if somebody that doesn't know me come to me and say, I'm scared of you, there is somebody that is not working there. So what I want to say is that you have to do it with the people that is directly near to you, but unfortunately there is also a lot of work of people that just see you as a role model. So you need to smile, always say hi, try to even sometimes look, this guy is crazy, he's always happy, even if you're not. It's fundamental because at the end you're a role model. And if they don't see you like that, you're missing opportunities. And it's something I learned last week. It was very interesting.
Yeah. But I think it's important because one thing that you encounter is that people have ideas about how leaders should be. And they project that on you. And that is sort of like, so this is not just about what you're doing, it's also about how people think that you should be doing or how you think you should be acting, right? I think your example gives that, it's a great example, your story, and also because people then project, this is probably because you're the CEO, so you're unapproachable, which you may not be, but this is their ideas. So to break through that, I think is a very crucial, but also very difficult part, because at the same time, you still, because that's what I showed, the symbol of humility and strength, you still have a responsibility for the organization. You still have to sometimes make decisions which will not please everybody. So how do you do that kind of decisions?
It's not simple, especially when...
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of simple when being a CEO. Hold that thought, because before we go on, you might have noticed this little cube of a stuffed animal. We're not here just to have the conversation and let you watch. You might have questions as well. So we're going to play a fun game now. There are 3 students with microphones who are going to be prepared to run and get you if you're interested in asking a question. I'm also going to throw this cube stuffed animal microphone into the audience with all of my might. And we'll play a game of hot potato. If you don't want to ask a question, you need to find someone who does and throw the cube at them. Are you ready? Think about your questions. I'm going to get back to you in a second. We're going to find someone with a question. I'll see with my age if I can manage this. There you go. Let the hot potato begin. You were saying.
I have to. You can hear me? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So, just a concrete question. So, you said last week, I learned that I could look scary to others.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. And you work not being scary to your close team. But now that you have this knowledge about how you possibly look to others, what are the other concrete actions you think you're going to take to be more approachable? And
yeah, I'm gonna try to be more approachable, more simple, smile much more, say hi to everybody, let them drive my car. I don't know. No, but it also, I think it has a lot to do even of what you wear. I'm now, it seems stupid to me, But I have a brother that works in the company, and as a matter of fact, he's much tougher than me. But the way he approaches people and he looks, it seems much more down to earth, easy to get, and he's always more humble at the beginning. Then, then I have a lot of people asking if they can work for me instead of him afterward. But it's true. I mean,
What's the difference? by the
something
way?
I want to work on actually, and something that I want to talk also with my coach. I have somebody helping me as well, because I don't want people to have this perception, because it will be totally against what's also my style of leadership. So it's something I have to work on.
I'm just curious, what's the difference between your brother and you, and how is it to be in an organization where you are your brother's boss? I'm asking two questions, but I don't know if you want to.
But you know, we're doing two very different jobs, and he is a creative person. He's the head of licenses for diesel, so he sees the world from another planet. On planet Earth, he's on Mars or Venus. I still don't know. So it's not a problem. Plus, I think we know each other so well that we probably manage each other's in the right way. So I know when there is a problem, how to handle him, and he does the same. Then I'm not his direct boss, so it's not a big problem. I think we have more problem dealing with the big boss than among us.
Okay.
So
Because he's still there, the big boss?
he is still there, very present. And it's funny because when he works 1 hour, it makes you feel he worked a lot. Almost like the 10 hours more that you do, they're not worth nothing compared to his hours. No, but I'm just kidding. He's present, and also he's still relatively young. He's only 61, so I think we were smart enough to start to do this transition, and he was also pushing for this already 5 years ago, so to take the right time to do it. Because especially when you change from a me model to a we model, you can't do it in one day. There is a lot that people have to understand. There is a lot that we also have to understand about ourselves that we didn't know. For instance, writing down our values was an incredible exercise. Incredible. Before they were in the air, then we had to sit down and say, okay, we have to write them down. It was a page long, and we came down to 4. It took months, because to squeeze a vision and a mindset inside a few words is the most complicated things you can do.
Less is more, and it's
Less is
also
more.
quite difficult, isn't it?
Very difficult, very difficult.
Now, I think you're hiding the cube now, because I can't find it. You have it, or do you have a question? Please go ahead.
Hi.
Hello?
I was wondering, how do you budget for happiness and like employee happiness and cool environment? I think in a lot of companies, ambiance is the first thing to go with operational budget. Just curious how you guys integrate that from
Well,
a practical
I
standpoint.
have to be totally fair, because otherwise it's not right. You can budget it when you can. It means when you have the power to do it, but it's fundamental. We got to a point where we were just very operational. Our old facilities, old HQ, we were basically sitting on top of each other, no windows, working 20 hours a day. I didn't know if it was raining, sunshine, day, night, spring, autumn. We didn't know anything. We were alienated by work, and we could feel that it was also less effective on work. So when we were able to build our new company, our new headquarters, it was an immediate reactions. When you realize you're not happy, you don't work well, and you also get physically sick, you realize you have to change. So at a certain point, it becomes a must. if you want to work better and also have people to have a better lifestyle, because at the end it's going to impact on the company results.
So the question is really, how do you keep happiness and motivation going, not in the best of times when it's easy and when you might have a budget, but in the worst of times?
Good
Any
cookie.
ideas?
It's difficult.
It's difficult.
It's not simple.
Thank you. It's difficult. But it's a choice. I would say, I know it's difficult. You have to be aware that it's difficult, but it's also to avoid the sort of like Pavlov reaction that we have, is that because I think that was the comment also, is like what a lot of organizations happens, it doesn't go well, so we cut away all these expenses. And sometimes that it's needed, but sometimes you're actually creating more problems than it's worth.
Well, before, we see the advent of the chief happiness officer, how do you make sure that within management, everyone assumes responsibility in a sense, even at mid-management levels, for maintaining that climate?
You have to drive it. And it has to come from the top. So it has to be a prerequisite and a must for the heads of the company. And in this, our family, but not only our top management, is very focused and keen.
Okay.
Otherwise, it doesn't happen naturally because people just tend to do a job. If you don't understand that there is much more inside a company and inside person than just a job, then you lose opportunities. But it's not natural. You really have to drive it from the top.
How about just one last question? How about over there? Either
Also there, I see the
right
cube and I
there?
see a hand.
The cube? Oh,
we can do
heavens,
two.
we've got a lot. We can do, okay, we can do two.
He is the CEO, eh?
Decisiveness counts. Yes, sir, right there. If
No.
you want, yeah.
There's too many cubes here.
The cube is
see a
here, and then we're
cube.
going to pass it back to the gentleman there. So first the cube here, and the gentleman, ask your question, and we'll take you next.
Thanks. Professor Van Dierendonck finished his opening session saying the higher the level of the executive and the management, the more listening and the less doing they should do.
Yes.
I wanted to ask for your experience.
It's totally true. But it's the most difficult thing to do. No, because
What
maybe
makes it difficult?
No, it sounds stupid, but it's a practice that is very unnatural
Yeah.
for people. Listening, getting people ideas, giving also feedbacks that are not positive is very hard for people in general. Try to think when you're having a conversation, when you're having a task on the table and someone tell you, oh, I went to eat Italian yesterday. Immediately you said, I eat Japanese. You don't say, oh, how was it? What did you eat? Is something natural. So when you get to a certain level, it's almost like what you think doesn't count that much anymore. Is what other people think that counts. Then you have to become good in taking what they think and drive it to where you want.
So it
And-
sounds like you've started to learn the practice of asking open questions that solicit a broad answer, but driving the questions in a
certain direction.
Yeah.
In a certain direction, and having also, when you challenge somebody, also you have to do it in a positive way. So, but what do you think it would be better if? How do you see if? You have to open, and the more you open, the more people are willing to open and to change also their idea, because you have to make people sometimes bring ideas and change it, thinking that they did instead you did it, but they don't realize.
One last question there, sir.
Many times, when you're positive and happy to your colleagues, it can be perceived as you're a relaxed person. How do you make yourself look serious and positive at the same time?
Good question.
And it sounds like your idea of relaxed is not necessarily a positive one. Do I have that right?
No. For me, it's very, because I am
Okay.
the same like this. And some people, many times, people say he's not serious, he's not doing his work or something, and he's just playing around. But I am actually doing my job.
But, you know,
We'll tell your boss that you do your job. Yes.
I think he's happy with me.
But don't make a mistake. When I say it's about positive feeling, about being happy, that doesn't mean it's not the same as just, lying around or just smiling all the time. It's about a basic innate feeling that you feel good, that you feel positive. And of course, the moment you start to work on something, you will not smile all the time. I mean, that's unnatural.
then I think also preparation and bring out your competencies and skills helps driving also the seriousness about who you are and what you do. So when you get to appointments and you are prepared, you know the task, you did your homeworks, and you're able to bring something, even if you have a positive and relaxed attitude, people trust you because they know you're accountable for what you're doing. So it's not only about the sense of openness that you have, but it's also about the sense of accountability and preparation that you get. And this is also a good and very important piece.
Thank you.
It is my job to keep us on track today, which is a sad job in a lot of ways, because I think we could go on and have a wonderful discussion for another hour at least. But for right now, I want to thank you, Stefano.
Wow, flowers.
And thank you, Dirk.
Thank you.
And Stefano, for you, we also have the book, The Dream of Enlightenment, which is by Anthony Gottlieb, which is suggesting to us that the people we think of as the philosophers responsible for how we approach, how we think now, were not professional philosophers. They were actually people who spent a lot of time thinking and then did something with those thoughts that influenced society.
Oh, great.
They came from all sorts of different walks of life. I think you'll find it a fascinating book.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you
appreciate it.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
I can have any spare hands. Thank you.